looks like my hair is on fire, like from Hercules.
Yeah, it does. You got little James Woods things going.
Yeah, I got a James Wood thing. I like, who put out my hair? Which was probably one of the funniest lines.
It was a pretty funny line,
Right.
and
I mean, that's just not. And now there's an example of good writing in that in comedy, really one of the rules is that a line should not be transferable to any other show, movie, anything. It doesn't matter. It's got to be able to exist only in the universe that you're in. And
ideally,
I
yeah,
thought that's a perfect example of a line. Say, who put out my hair?
yeah. What other movie could have that except for the Hercules film from
With Hades is
Hades?
with a head of fire.
See, that's one of the things that I think makes a great comedy. Just like when you're dealing with, say, for instance, Young's Frankenstein. They're at the breakfast table.
Oh,
They're talking about the body, and then the assistant says, "Wow, he must have a huge like Wiener Schnitzel or something." And it's like, yes, I suppose he would. It's like you can't really put that in anything else when they're
no.
talking about cobbling together bits and pieces of a person to to create a reanimated life.
Is
And
that
yeah,
Terry Garr? Was that Terry Garr?
that was Terry Garr, who
Yeah.
I adore.
Oh, she was great. That was her first movie.
Yes,
She
yes, it
came out
was.
of nowhere. Her very conservative upbringing, and she ended up wearing that silky nighty outfit, and man, she was sexy. Holy smokes.
And then you have the brilliant line where Gene Wilder says, "Wow, what knockers?" And she goes, "Oh, thank you, doctor."
Yeah, not juvenile at all. And then, of course, you've got the stand like a Frau Blucher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
again, one of the most fun things in writing a comedy is that, like I said, the lines are very specific to that character. It builds that character, and it's generally can't be used someplace else. I'd have to go through the lines of the screenplay that we wrote together, whether it fulfills the can't be used someplace else thing. But then it's not an outrageous comedy.
it's
It's
not
pretty.
outrageous enough, but it does have that one scene, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone because we've been live for 2 minutes, and I want to say
Right.
hi to the chat there. Thank you for
Hey, hello,
entering us.
chat.
Entering in while we're mid conversation. We this was my deliberate part because we're talking comedy. I was granted access to seeing the Daily Wire's Lady Ballers, which is
Wow.
written, directed, and starring Jeremy Boring.
Right.
And I wanted to try to see if I could elaborate or explain this movie to Paul Chato
Yeah.
because I was not too impressed with the trailer. However, I decided, you know what? I want to go in this and I want to see if they can make me laugh. And I think that's the first type of perspective that anyone looking at a comedy should be requesting of it is just, can you make me laugh?
I didn't mind the trailer. It kind of reminded me of the Porky's era of juvenile comedy, which is not necessarily a bad thing in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But they had some hurdles that I thought that they needed to get over to convince people that this was, this was the premise that they had aspired to, whether they managed to execute it. And then there's the ending. Like, I have no idea what the ending was going to be, based on the trailer, which is a good thing. The trailer should not tell you what the ending is.
Yes, very, very true. Guessing the ending is going to be very difficult for a lot of people, and I think that's maybe one of the few pluses on this
Okay.
show, on this movie. When I saw the trailer, it reminded me so much of the Jason Friedberg, Aaron Seltzer pseudo comedies of like Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans, Date Movie. These were the guys that got coffee for the Wayans brothers when they were doing Scary Movie, and then
Okay.
managed to maneuver themselves to actually make movies. That they were making movies for 15 years, and after 15 years of failures, they were finally not able to ever make a film in Hollywood ever again.
And that's for real, right?
That is for real.
Wow.
They have literally failed out of the industry.
And all their movies, but they weren't expensive movies.
They're very cheap, very quick. Someone kept on giving them money, and I think
They didn't do White Girls, did they?
No, they didn't. That White Girls was, I think, done before they even got involved with the Wayans brothers way
Okay.
back when.
Wow.
But yeah, they essentially kind of cornered the straight to home video DVD market with their films. And when that market kind of declined, and they saw that nobody was showing up to the movie theaters for their stuff, and also on top of that, the sales at the retail level were not generating enough for it to be worth investing in. They were no longer able to make any films,
Wow.
and that's the tone I got from Lady Ballers from the
Wow.
trailer. And I was hoping that wasn't the case, but sadly it is. And I'll give
Oh no.
everybody the basic no, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic on that. It just like
No.
they just there's clearly not enough of a skill set behind the people who are writing and directing this film to be, I would say, a competitor among the general um, comedic genre for film
We should. I
television.
guess we should mention there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be spoilers here. I'm going to try and keep them mild because again, there's definitely going to be an audience for this, and there's definitely people in the chat, I'm certain, who are subscribers of the Daily Wire, and I hold no bias or critique against them for doing that. I'm all for it. You know, if you dig their content, like their coverage, like their news and stuff, yeah, you have that's no slight against me. I have no problem with that.
Well,
You're cool in my
I'm
book.
thinking of jokes already. There should be a sequence where Matt Walsh comes out and asks one of the basket players, "What is a basketball player?"
Not they don't have that, unfortunately.
Oh,
In
see,
fact,
that would be a great gag.
it would be a great drag. They do have a "What is a woman" joke.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's too on the
attempt at a
nose. They
joke.
needed to turn that into something. Anyway, was it funny?
Uh, I wish it were. I really do, because I think the concept is ripe for great jokes and great commentary on things. One of the biggest failings this movie has is that they don't create a proper setting to the world with which these characters live. So it's
You mean
very much
pre pretending they're trans or post?
as in, what are the consequences of society today? In other words, this movie is dependent on today's real world, and there's no way that if someone were to watch this 10 or 15 years from now, they'd understand what is going on because there's
Oh,
no
that's
rules
interesting.
established. So there's subtle nods to some people wearing masks, lots of, like, several masks over top of their faces because of course, the pandemic. And there's also a suggestion of cancellation and social media cancellation. But
But there was a sequence where a wrestler towered over some
Mhm.
girl and smacked her on the ground. I thought maybe they would go through a sequence of sports that women are getting slaughtered in. Did they do that?
They do in a montage, but it's not any, like, the big guy slamming her down. That's part of the montage, and that's the only type of the most outrageous type of comedy that they have there physically. They don't do anything more with it other than the obvious of, the man throws the shot put further than anyone else.
Right.
The man runs faster than anyone else. The man swims faster than anyone else.
Well, they did that. They did the man swims faster.
Yes, they even got in that Riley Gaines lady. I think if
Okay.
that's her name correctly.
Yep,
Correct me
yep,
if I'm wrong,
yep,
please.
yep, yep. Well,
She's in there.
that's good.
She doesn't say anything, but she's there.
So they did
And
set it up. They set up a world where men, male-bodied uh, 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 women
mhm.
are kicking ass. They did set that up then, but you didn't think
No,
they
they
set it
did.
up.
This comes over an hour into the movie.
What? Oh no, that's got to be right at the beginning.
Exactly. The other part of the setup is that they don't show anyone getting canceled beforehand. So that there's a threat of cancellation, but we never actually see anyone. We don't see the sacrificial lamb, as it were. That
Oh,
shows that this actually happens and this is a thing in this world at all.
well, I would have thought that that would be the motivation for getting these people off their asses to pull this stunt. That would be my thought. That has to be at the beginning.
Right. It's not there. In fact, it's not addressed at all.
Right. Oh, okay. That's
But it
that's
is brought up as as a consequence, but we don't know what the consequence of that actually entails.
okay. Yeah, I mean, if Riley Gaines really wanted to put a exclamation mark on it, she should be yelling at the ref and then they just toss her out.
Right.
She
They
probably would have been amenable to that.
But again, we don't get anything of that nature. In fact, all the referees in this movie don't care, which that's supposed to be a joke.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
they don't care. The other aspect is that so the main character played by Jeremy Boring is named Rob. He's a coach, a high school basketball coach who has 2 state championships under his belt. When we first meet him in the year 2008, and it's the championship game, and his team is
Spoiler
not
alert.
doing. Yes, this is the spoiler alert. The team is not doing so well, so after the first half, they go into the locker room, and you think you're going to get that cliche, motivational speech, because he says he's not going to give that, and then he gives that, and on paper that's supposed to be a joke, but it's not seamlessly done. It's not well framed. It's not properly set up, and even what he does say, um, it's silly on the surface, but it's not laugh out loud silly.
Okay.
Um, like, 'cause there's a catchphrase: "Losers are winners who win," or "Winners are losers who win." That's what the catchphrase is.
Winners are losers who win. Okay.
Yeah, that's the level of intelligence that this is giving at
Okay.
people. So anyways, yeah, they get the motivational speech. They go out, the high school team, they win their championship, and then we flash forward to current day, where Coach Rob is no longer working at a high school. He's at a rec center, it looks like, and he's trying to motivate the kids who are on their phones, and they all scoff at him and leave. And then while he's driving to pick up his daughter, he gets a phone call and he's fired from his job. So we have this high school basketball coach who's won 3 state championships, and something has happened to him over the last 15 years where now he's unemployed, no longer working, no longer revered. And unfortunately, we are never shown or really disclosed any details as to how he got in this position. It is
Right.
at best alluded to that the world changed and he is suffering as a result of it, but he's not really suffering.
Okay. That's kind of weird.
It is. So he picks up his daughter, who he loves, and his daughter's great. Um, she's, of course, reciting stuff from a public school of what the teachers are teaching them about social justice and
Right.
gender fluidity and all that
She's
stuff. And
the blonde girl who tells
yeah,
them all they have to do is self ID and it's done.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
that's
She's
her.
good. She's good.
For the few moments that she has, she is good. They do a lot of editing around her because you can tell that she wasn't able to land a lot of the lines in one
Okay.
take.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But props to her. She did her best, and she is adorable
She's
to
adorable.
she's adorable to watch. I think, if she continues acting as a career, she could probably go the distance.
She wouldn't be
Um,
allowed to act in anything in Hollywood now. She's she
over
is
the next 10 years, but I think by the time she hits adulthood, they'd have no problems with her.
if she
There's only
changes
actually really 2 actors in this film that are any good. One is the little girl, and the other is this guy who plays the character Alex. Um,
and boring isn't good.
Boring could teach a master class on wooden acting.
Wow.
He basically looked at Sonequa Martin Green from Star Trek Discovery and Brie Larson from Captain Marvel and said, "Hold my Bud Light." Like, he is terrible. I mean, you have a new appreciation for the acting of those 2 ladies in what they're doing after you see Jeremy Boring in this.
Wow.
Um, and I think he should have just stuck to his directing and producing job and not have been in this. Maybe try to get some other staffer from the Daily Wire to play the role,
Wow.
because
Well, I mean, he was doing a lot.
he was definitely doing a lot, and I think that's probably where it suffers from, because if he doesn't have someone like as a first AD or second AD telling him, "Hey, yeah, maybe we should see the rushes and see if you really like that performance." And part of me, a lot of this production does feel rather rushed, so I don't think they had a whole lot of time. They show some sets that are seen once and then they're never used ever again.
Mhm.
So it's like, well, why did you even put a scene here?
Mm.
um, but yeah, so he's unemployed. He's divorced. His wife is dating Matt Walsh, who is a hippie wokester who who you think would be funny in concept, but he's very boring to watch. He doesn't do any. He does all the, like, the namaste stuff. Like
I
there's
see.
nothing
So
fun.
he's having fun at the expense of those people.
Yeah, he is
Well,
having fun
I'm sticking it to those hippies.
to those hippies. Here's the thing that they had an opportunity and they missed it, and that is he likes to hug a lot. And then he
Okay.
also so he's hugging Jeremy Boring and then he's inhaling, but the thing is he's not actually sniffing him. He's just doing a deep
Oh, he's
inhale.
doing a Biden?
No, he's afraid to do a Biden. That's the problem. Like his head is just staring straight to the camera and he just deeply inhaling when the gag would be he would bury his nose into the back of Jeremy Boring's neck and then
Right.
inhale. And
Right.
he doesn't do that.
I wonder.
And so it just kind of cripples the creepiness that this joke could have had.
Right.
So it's a little bit unfortunate there because I'm thinking, okay, you're going to go this way, commit to the bit, go
But
as far as you
Matt
can.
is a devout Christian, and that might have been too far for him.
See if he's a devout Christian and he's acting. That's kind of violating the commandment of do not bear false witness. So he's better go to
Unless you
confession.
get paid well.
Yeah, was it a bag of silver? You need to do that.
I think so.
But but yeah, like so yeah, he's divorced. His ex-wife dating this guy. You know, there's supposed to be conflict there, but I don't believe it. That's the other problem. Like I don't know why they're not together. They don't elaborate on
And
that.
is she set up as an antagonist?
No,
Okay. So,
she's
I
just
mean,
there.
we talked about Truby, his rule that you need a minimum of 4 antagonists,
Yes,
which I think is a really good. It's not a bad idea. An antagonist can be a
anything.
location that is fighting against what it is that you're trying to do. It could be a person. It's a really good idea, to have that. And the wife should have been written as, they could have been in the middle of a divorce and demands were made on his time and what he was going to be losing, and just
Mhm.
exacerbated his level of anxiety. So she becomes a true antagonist.
See, absolutely, and that's one of the things that I was kind of really hoping to see in this film is stakes.
Stakes,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
what
There's
is at
stakes
stake?
everywhere.
So, there's nothing at stake for any of the characters in this film. So we have this Jeremy Boring's character. He's divorced. He gets to see his daughter. There's no conflict of interest in visitation or anything of that nature.
Right.
So that's not at stake. He doesn't have a job, so he has to find a job, and he does by going to this old store that used to sell CD and records, but it's now a place called the Dollhouse where men dress up as women and serve patrons. But
Okay.
he's surprised by this after entering the building and applying for a job, which is like really you're trying to
Kind of
do the
lame.
it's kind of lame and it's kind of unbelievable that he would be surprised by this after having already entered the building because technically for a guy that has several of his own businesses you tend to advertise the name of your business on the building with which you operate.
That's always usually a good idea.
It's preferable unless you're Telefilm Canada, um, which they don't have any signage anymore. um, but yeah, so he's in there. He applies for a job. They hire him, and as soon as he walks into the dining area, he sees Alex, his former student, dressed as a woman with the blonde hair, blonde wig, and yeah, they're just there. And so they're at a bar, both dressed in drag, kind of after their shift, just talking to each other. And at some point, Jeremy Boring character remembers that Matt Schultz is competing in some sort of amateur sports event, and that because his former student was, the fastest basketball player on the court, he should compete as well, and they could split the money, and the money's $5,000, and that would solve some of their
Oh
problems.
no, it's not. Oh, he needs money, and then he's going to go out and do this gamble thing.
Nope. You think that you'd
Yeah,
hope
but
that.
even that's a horrible. I hate. That's like
Yeah.
one of the worst premises. Oh no, I'm down on my luck. I better go to this chess tournament or this body hair tournament or all you can eat bean sauce tournament. And oh my God, I absolutely loathe that.
But that's what it is. He's trying to convince him to get some money, because again, Jeremy Boring needs money. He doesn't want to be serving people at a restaurant dressed in drag, and so he
So
convinces.
okay, I already don't care about his plight.
Yep. But here's the fascinating thing: they agree, so they go to the track event to register, and Alex shows up, dressed as normal clothes, but he's still wearing the blonde wig because I don't know why. Like he just is. Rob goes to register. The registrar there, she's got all these buttons and pins for like, LGBTQ, pro trans, all that type of stuff. And when he tries to register Alex, she says all the spots are taken up and he's calling out BS. And she's threatening to taser him, which is what the shot you see in the trailer.
Right.
She does taser him. And then Alex shows up wearing the wig. And now the registrar thinks, oh my God, it's a trans athlete. I don't want to be canceled. I will totally register you for every event and I won't even charge you the fee because she's
Right.
so horrified by what she did. And then that's where Jeremy Boring gets the idea. Okay, he can compete in women and he could just completely dominate the events, and that's what ends up happening. And while they're doing this, a journalist from a fictional news network is there on assignment, and while she's seeing this Alex character just dominate in racing, dominating in shot put, dominating in javelin throwing, she's like, call the station, we've got a story, which is the dumbest thing you could say when you're a reporter with a camera crew next to you already on assignment. It's
Just
like you don't need to call
record
the
the
station.
damn story.
Yeah, record the damn story. It's the dumbest thing ever. So yeah, that's what ends up happening. They record the story. He's Alex interviews, saying he's got all the trophies. All the women behind him are kind of, despondent. And the journalist is saying, yeah, this is a beautiful, powerful, brave person. And the anchors, of course, are trying to subtly call out that that's a man. And then the joke is they get spoken to in their earpieces. And when we come back to them, there's nobody at the studio anymore. Because they've been canceled or something
Oh,
or alluded
that
to canceling. But then when they come back, one of the anchors, a male anchor, finds out he's 10/24th or 10/28th Native American, which is a slight against, I guess, Elizabeth Warren.
right.
And then the other anchor is part something else, and she's got a terrible blonde wig, and they've braided her hair into like cornrows or something, and it's very cringy. But while Rob and Alex are at the bar, the journalist comes up to him and says, "I know you guys are fake. You're not really a trans athlete. However, uh, I'm a journalist and I'm evil, and I want a Pulitzer Prize. So if you do what I tell you to do and give me half the money entering the global games, I won't expose you." And that's basically it. The journalist is the antagonist of the film. And
Right.
then she's also trying to seduce Jeremy Boring because he's a winner and women like winners. Like that's the overall concept. And so that's where
So if you don't want me to reveal the truth, you're going to have to do this, and at some point Boring is going to have to find his cojones and his integrity and split from her because it's just too much for him. He doesn't want to be blackmailed anymore.
almost like that. Yes, almost. um so yeah, he gets the idea. Okay, he'll enter into the basketball team or the global games, and they'll get the old high school team back together to do it. And then you go on the home, bringing, rebuilding the team, bringing the team band back together type of thing. And he doesn't tell any of them that they have to dress as women yet. So you could have that cliched scene of like, yeah, this is the way we get in here is that you're all going to pretend to be trans
Right.
women athletes. So they get upset, but then they don't care because they realize they get to play basketball again. Of all these guys, there's nothing at stake for them to want to do this anyways. They're just being told you can play basketball again. And yet at no point do we get any of the characters miss the sport or are struggling financially enough to warrant entry into this at all.
Wow, this
So they're
sounds
just,
juvenile.
yeah, so they're just doing it to do it, which is boring. I mean, they're getting attention, which they like, but that's not something they were actually seeking out initially. So that's just a happy byproduct that kind of corrupts them later on. But it doesn't facilitate the fact that, okay, and this is the question I posed to myself when watching this, is that, okay, let's say hypothetically that the journalist doesn't approach them in the bar and tell them about the global games. What are Alex and the Jeremy Boring character going to do next? Nothing. They have no other plans beyond what they just did. So they're just there. And what's at stake for any of them? Nothing. Like he's not
Nothing.
going to lose his daughter. He's not going to lose his house in the divorce or anything. He's got money from that event, so he's covered for at least a couple of weeks until he can find another job, or he can go back into the job that he met Alex at and continue doing that if he wants to and be miserable. But there's no other avenue for him to explore. And because of that, it's like, well, what's the point in watching this movie if there's not going to be anything at stake if these characters win or lose? And what we do is just follow them competing in the games. They realize that all the men in there can dominate other sports, so we get the jokes of one guy going into weightlifting, one guy going into wrestling, swimming. They have one attempt to joke where one guy goes into tennis and then he competes, but he gets tennis elbow in both of his arms, so now he can't play basketball too well because his wrists are kind of numb. And it's not highlighted enough for it to be a really funny joke because it's happening among the other character, Alex, who starts buying into the fact that he's really a woman deep down inside, which would be funny, except they
That's
don't do much to really explore that until the very, very end, where in order to change his mind, Jeremy Boring just hits him right in the genitals and he drops to the ground. And that's kind of the end of his stuff.
wow.
And it takes quite like we're not getting any gags really with regards to the actual basketball game. Like they're playing against the women and then they're just dominating them. And you get montages of the guys just kind of being very rough with the girls. So every time they jump to make a dunk, the girls, of course, their heads are like smacking into their stomachs, or we'll have a weird angled shot where it looks like their faces are being smacked into their genitals while they're being up in the air and what have you. And it just over and over and over again. There's nothing really fun with the cleverness of the gags going on here. Like there's no imagination.
And did the girls look like WNBA
Yeah.
players? Tall? Okay.
Oh yeah, they're all like women. Some of them are tall, some of them are a little bit shorter, but they're athletic looking and they look like they could, compete to them.
I
So
mean,
there's
one thing that dawned on me is that if the guy who decided that perhaps he is trans,
Mhm.
or realizes that he really is deep down,
Something,
perhaps,
yeah.
you know, eh, he's the one who quits the team because he doesn't want to be playing against women.
No, he's not the guy that does that. In fact, he wants to keep doing it because for the first time his parents are proud of him. But we never see his parents. So it's all just he's telling us that.
But
So
that
we
would
don't.
be a good angle. I mean,
Mhm.
if that would be the angle that you would want to convey to people, that a trans individual who does
Finds guilt.
understand that they are male-bodied does not want to compete in a against women.
Mhm.
See, that's the story that we would want to see.
That would now they touch on that a little bit with another character who is very tall. Then when they found him, he's living out in the woods because he had some sort of incident in college where
Is he the guy who looks like the January 6th guy with the horns and his fur hat?
kind of he has like the shortest hair. So like if you take a look at the thumbnail, the guy over my right shoulder, that's not him. That's the guy that thinks he's a woman.
Right.
The
Okay.
one whose head is hid by the W in the review, that's the guy that was out in the woods.
Oh, good. Thank you. Now that makes
Uh,
all the difference in the world. The
yeah,
guy hidden by my W.
he's the only one that's like the most clean shaven and clean
Okay.
cut of all of them.
Right.
And
I'll take your word for it.
so he witnessed the mascot of his rival team, which is a badger, just humping the air, and that somehow triggers him. And what he does is he kidnaps that mascot and he hides him in the basement of his cabin out in the woods, trying to figure out why he's doing that. And then it's never addressed again. But when he starts playing against the women, he starts feeling bad. And he says this is unfair. But then the journalist comes in and decides and convinces them all that they could be superstars in this division, so it doesn't matter. And
Oh, and
then
then
they
that's
just buy
gone.
into it. Yeah, and then they buy into it, and it's gone. Yeah,
Okay.
and so it's not until well, as like the ex-wife actually finds this to be good at first and then bad when she starts realizing what's happening, and she calls out Jeremy Boring's character on it, and then she screams, the players aren't real women in front of the Matt Walsh character. The Matt Walsh character is shocked by this lack of wokeness, and then just walks away, and we don't know if they're broken up or not.
Wow.
I know it's
It
so.
just sounds horrible.
I'm trying to be as charitable as I can with it, but it's really difficult.
It's, you know what? If you're going to write a movie like this, you really have to go, okay, I'm going to put my Will Ferrell hat on.
Right.
Because it's kind of dodgeball-y. I mean, it's got the, Ben Stillery
Mhm.
vibes and things like that. What would Ben Stiller or Will Ferrell do in this? Because I mean, there was a moment in my document where I felt like, is this Blades of Steel? I mean,
Or yeah,
um,
Blaze of Glory. Blaze of
Blades
Glory.
of
Blaze of
Blades
Steel
of
is a
Glory.
video game.
Blades of Steel is a video game. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
So it just sounds to me like this is just not well written.
Yeah, that's a very polite way of putting it. It's not very well written. They try to have a heartwarming moment when, and this is where you have the dramatic change. This comes in the third act. Is that Jeremy Boring's the girl that plays his daughter comes in and she says she wants to be a boy, and he's just like, well, why? And she says, well, boys are good at everything, and she names a laundry list of things that men are statistically better at, and he says, well, that may be the case, but boys are better at those things because boys made them up. Women are good at things. And he makes a counter list of what they're good at. And one of the things that he points out, which I thought was okay, and there's potential there, is that women help civilize men. And there wouldn't be a society without women to civilize men. And there's a value to that. That's more important than anything that you could think of physically between the two genders. On the principle, I'm like, okay, there's a good idea here, but
Hmm.
you're presenting it and you're wrapping it up in the single scene, as opposed to showing other examples of that for all the other characters on the team to understand, reconcile, and maybe reinforce. um so when that happens, he's like, he's really upset and he doesn't want to do this anymore, and he challenges the journalist, and she's just like, I'll destroy you if you don't. And then all of a sudden, when they go to
Yeah.
the finals to go up against the next team, that's where what you see in the trailer, the men coming in for the opposite team. They come in and they're being led by that same journalist who has now switched sides.
And so everybody else has ringers.
So everybody else has ringers, and then they're playing, and the lady ballers are getting their butts kicked in the first half, and
And then they
so
win.
uh, not necessarily. They go into they have their their locker room speech,
Right.
what have you. And then Jeremy says, "You know what? I have an idea, a different idea. Stay here." And then he leaves, and then he comes back, not just with his daughter, but with his daughter's friends, dressed in the pink Lady Baller jerseys, and he substitutes them in for the men, so that these little 8-year-old girls are playing against these grown men on the rival team.
And why?
Because he wants, I guess, because he wants to show that if this is going to be a girls' team, it should be a girls' team. And here's
Hmm.
the thing that happens, and they're missing a beat for it to make sense, but that is when when the game resumes, the men on the other team just hand the ball over to the little girl, and then and then they play with the little girls, and they pick them up and they help them dunk the basket and everything. And it's like, well, why are this rival team doing it if they were so willing to come in there to game the system to win,
Right.
especially against women, and then men of lesser talent pretending to be women? Why would their mentality change when they're playing against 8-year-old girls?
I get what he's trying to do there.
Yes, me too. It's just he doesn't set it up to do that, and that's one of the big things missing from a comedy is it's all a bunch of punchlines, but there's no real setups to make those punchlines effective.
Well, this is the kind of movie where uh, you would sit down and brainstorm every conceivable gag
Right.
and then find a way to stitch it together afterwards. Like
Mhm.
everything would be a sketch that each one would have a beginning, middle, and an end. And
I wish some of them had a beginning, middle, and end.
but I think that's the way you would write this kind of movie. You go into a writing room with your entire gang of writers,
Mhm.
and it just stitch together a bunch of scenes that seem to make funny sense. I mean, again, you don't want to take the pedal off the metal, or the pedal off the gas
Yeah.
in terms of the comedy. I mean, you're trying to just keep it going, right?
Ideally, you want to try and make sure that every part has either a touching moment or a laughing
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, 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 yeah. And you've
And
covered all the basis of your premise.
it will explore it to its full intent. That's another thing that, Truby does. He's like, whatever your concept is, stay true to that concept all the
Oh,
way through.
absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is you end up writing 100 sketches and you use 24 of them. I mean,
Yeah, you use the best of the lot.
yeah.
And now, oddly enough, like the movie's not horribly paced. It's serviceably paced. Like at the certain time indexes, certain things happen. Like we know this that 22 minutes, the first act is ended. We're into the second act now, third act, and so forth. They have a bunch of smaller sort of gags. Like there's this pair of brothers who they have the same mom but two different fathers, but they're twins as well. So like the fathers had sex with the mother at the same time, and then they fertilized either the same egg or two different eggs, and twins were born out. But they don't do anything with it other than the fact
Okay.
that the two brothers fall in love with a rival woman basketball player and repeat the same thing. So now they're going to have two kids with this woman in
That
9 months.
uh, uh, okay.
Yeah, that was my reaction as well. Um,
And
we
what
we
was the
never find
point
out
of
what
that?
happened.
What was the what point were these people trying to make about that?
Nothing. It was
Oh,
just something they thought was funny and put in there, but they don't do anything with it. Like I would have done it like, well, which father is the father of the other guy, and then have the two dads come in and be fighting over their favorite son, which ends up
but then
not
what's
being
the
fair.
point? How does that work into the movie?
It doesn't because
Okay.
it's completely divorced from the rest of the film.
Wow.
It's just something they thought was funny. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention: they do put in an ad for Jeremy's razors, um, which would be funny.
Yes, those was $1 a month razors or something.
Yeah, basically the guy that was in the woods, he has, of course, the long hair and beard. He comes back clean shaven. He's like, "Oh wow, you look great." It's like, "Yeah, these Jeremy razors are great." And then it literally cuts to the other basketball player holding up Jeremy's razors and saying, "These are Jeremy's razors." Blah 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 blah. And then they get back into the
Oh, I
story.
see.
Um,
That's
it's
kind of like a Mad TV gag.
kind of like a Mad TV gag. I think Spaceballs did it better with the merchandising of the product in their
Right,
own movie, of course.
right. I'll
But
have to
that
watch
is
that
clearly kind of
again.
what they were trying to do. Um, so then so yeah, the little girls are playing with the team, and then it kind of wraps up with the newscast, the news anchors who are no longer wokeified. They're back into their normal clothes and attires, and they're like, "Yep, it was a very touching moment." However, the rival basketball team slaughtered the 8-year-old girls with like 400 points to 6 or something, and then you cut to 9 months later, and they're at like a used car dealership that's owned by by the twins, and they've set up a rec center, and Jeremy Boring's character is the coach to that, and he's happy and proud, and he's learned a lesson that winning isn't everything or something of that nature. It's very very thinly done, and then he basically asks his wife out on a date with him and his daughter to a picnic, and it looks like they're going to get back together, and then
Oh,
that's
I
the
see.
end of the movie.
So they're in the middle of divorce, not divorced.
It was very ambiguous because if they're in the middle of divorce and she's like dating another guy, I mean that's always a weird thing,
Yeah,
especially when he's calling her lovers. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of called infidelity. Doesn't matter that you started
correct.
the process. That's what it is. Um, so yeah, it's
If
not
you're
clearly
separated, you
defined.
can have sex with other people
I mean, you can
without
always
it
have
being
sex with other
infidelity.
people.
That's
Well, I
fine.
mean, if you're separated and you do that, and then you don't end up getting divorced and getting back together, that's still infidelity because you have.
I I I just don't get what the stakes are
There
based
aren't
on
any.
what you talked about. I mean, not that this is a good idea, but at the thing that would make the most sense if Jeremy was actually a coach of a women's WNBA team and
He wanted to win, and this
he
is his
wanted to
plan.
win and he brings in this, a dude to join the women and the women are not happy about it, but the corporation pulls a Riley Gaines on them, saying, "You're all gone if you don't go with this." Like, don't make them happy about doing it. Don't make them part of the scam.
Right. Make them objectionable to it, but also reluctant, because if they don't
Right.
do it,
I
they have
mean,
no
like,
careers.
and the girl, I mean, you listen to the testimony of the girls from Penn State,
Yep.
with how Penn State coerced them, and even how Riley, when she tied what's his name in a race, they said, no, make him the spokesperson because it's going to look really good, or something like that. It's those kinds of beats that you would want to, if you're really trying to stick the knife into it,
Yeah.
you're going to want to have to duplicate those things, because that's the part that's shitty. The part that's shitty is what happened to the women.
Right.
And if they're going to make a point, that's the point that needs to be made. And in my short sort of non-review of the show, of this thing, the way you don't make it totally offensive to the trans community is that it's clear that no attempt was made to make these guys look like women, like zero attempt.
Yes.
Because I mean, obviously, I mean, already this movie has been called transphobic and things like that. But
And I would say it's not. That's the other part too. Like, there's no real hatred directed towards the
right.
trans community.
Well, that's good. But
Yeah.
I mean, the mere fact that they've done this, people are going to call it transphobic. I mean, that's
Exactly. And I would say that's of their own ignorance there, because it's taking advantage of the people that are taking advantage of this kind of quote unquote loophole within sports.
right. Right.
Yeah.
It's like
And
it's
they
like,
acknowledge that it's a
yeah, it's
loophole.
it's like having the dog in on your team.
Right. An
What
Air
is it?
Bud.
Air Bud. Yeah. I mean, that's this is another Air Bud, right?
Exactly. The thing that's kind of missing is that there's no character in this movie that is of that perspective, that either is pro what they're doing or against what they're doing. And the main characters that are doing it for themselves are kind of displaying all the traits of the bad guys, that would be the rivals against, say, an all women's team, that would be the underdogs. And they're doing their best to try and make them underdogs and sympathetic, but it doesn't quite stick,
Well, yeah,
because
I
there's
mean,
nothing at stake for them if they
if he
win or
was a
lose.
coach of the girls team, and obviously they're the worst in the league,
Mhm.
and I know this would be a steal from dodgeball, but having the sports announcers, and the one guy is like insanely dim and thinks that the guy substitute is actually pretty hot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Golden State girls aren't really doing particularly well, but they got a new player out there, and you
Look at
know
the
what?
gams on her.
What?
Look at the gams on
Look at the
her.
gams on her. Yeah, that's right. And she, as far as I'm concerned, she looks pretty special. And then the other guy sort of looks at her and goes, you know about her, right, Bill? Oh yeah, I'd like to know more about her. You know,
Like, good Bob Euchre moment there.
good Bob Euchre moment. Yep, don't really understand what's going on here, but sure looks great. And those guys would be throughout the entire movie.
Right.
I know, yes, that's a steal from dodgeball, but I mean, again, it sounds to me that they needed some threads all the way through this that kind of kept the thing uh, connected.
Yeah, and here's the other part of the premise I thought kind of gutted it a little bit, is that we're only ever seeing them enter in the qualification round. Like, we're not seeing them in the actual games. So this is just determine which team the United States is going to send to the main games.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so all right, this is one step of the leg. So how do we see this on the international circuit? Like, are there other, like, can we make fun? Like, I would be taking it to the international and be like, hey, check out Russia's team. And it's all like
Yeah.
men as women, just kind of aping some of the 1984 Olympics,
And
I think, or
and
something of
the
that nature.
joke, not the joke, but the real crime here is the international sports federations that didn't have the guts to deal with this early. And that's what they needed to be make fun of.
Right.
Because that's the premise. Because I mean, this movie, needs to be about protecting women's sports, and it would have
Correct.
been nice to have a scene where the women just revolt and go, "Okay, this is it. I've had it. This isn't the way
And
I want
instead,
to
it's
do
the
it."
men that revolt, and they bring in the little girls to play. And that's how they're trying to get their point across. And it just doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's a
completely
sweet, endearing collection
yeah,
of shots, but it just doesn't fit within the tone of the actual movie.
right.
Yeah, and
Wow. So, yeah, we've completely rewritten it. I mean, not
but
that what I've come up with isn't a cliche, a wretched cliche, but I mean, if we're
it's
going to
a
replace
wretched
one,
cliche, but it would hit all the needed beats in order to make it consider a movie that people would actually like go to the theaters. And I know that there's like the stories that actors in Hollywood read the script and said they couldn't do it because they're blacklisted. After watching this movie, I think that was their polite way of saying no because the
yeah,
script was so terrible that they're like, I can't be in this. And same thing with the theaters owners. I think that they saw a screener of this and they're like, nobody's going to come see this after the first day. This will kill us. We could actually just let's not
Hmm.
lose the screen on this movie. Let's just say no, we're not running it, and put something else in there that we at least know
Wow.
people will show up a little bit more
Now I
for.
don't know whether I can do my preview video that I wrote.
You should. I read. You sent me the script. I
I
read
know.
it. I think it's brilliant. Go for it because
Okay.
there's nothing wrong in what you stated.
I mean,
From
I would have thought that the theater owners would be afraid of protests over this. And you know, what
the
I
most
did write,
traffic that we get for this movie, though.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the as I mentioned, this whole behind the Daily Wire firewall business only works if the movies are fantastic.
Yes.
And it looks to me like, you know what, I might do an addendum in my, you know, I have now gotten the full scoop on this movie, and through Script Doctor, and these are some of the conclusions that we've come to. I'll try to figure that out. This is a good session. I might like bring the, you know, go make it black and then come back up again. Oh, I'm not done yet. By
Yeah.
the way, well,
Yeah.
it's too bad. I was actually kind of looking forward to it because the trailer wasn't horrific if they had done what I had suggested they would do.
Well, what the things that you're suggesting are kind of the standard operating procedures of writing a comedy.
Right,
And sadly, the people behind this film, Jimmy Boring being one of the writers, directors, and stars, they've never, you can tell that they've never written a comedy before or
no,
anything legitimately funny that wasn't also slightly a commercial to a degree because it's
right.
missing all of the elements required for it to be a movie. Because one of the things about sports movies and sports movie comedies is that they have to have stakes and an endearing
Yes.
quality at hand, and there's none of that here. It's. I mean, I would compare it to a bad SNL sketch during the worst years of SNL.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could have a scene where, you know, you could even have a scene where after the women have been told by the league and by the team owner that they got to lump it, that they put up with it for a little bit, and then they split, and then Jeremy brings in the rest of the boys and it becomes an all boy team,
Right.
because
And
then you're not lying to the audience about the feelings of the female players. And you have to be honest about that. You can't, and that's also that side of it is as much of the commentary that this movie should have had.
it really is because there's almost no commentary really to it. Um, the again, like they have the twin brothers. They're of course dog hounds claiming they're lesbians. And they want to go into the women's showers and look at girls, and they try to make that a point of contention when they're interviewed. But it washes over because they don't play with it in any way, shape, or form. Like I mean, if you were to do this in a proper, legitimate comedy where a pervert guy pretending to be a woman on a women's basketball team wants to go into the ladies' showers and pretend to be a lady, but try and get in their pants. There's a lot of creepy, funny ways and situations you can play with that, where they're trying to play it all off casually, and then the girls are inside are, of course, very resistant and averse to that, and are trying to back away and stuff. And he's just trying to sweet
But
talk them into being innocent.
that just makes it super creepy.
Yeah,
The funny gag would be the guys in the shower and they're naked, and then the girls come in and the guys go, ah!
There we go. That's even better.
That's the funny gag, because these are just like straight dudes, and they're this would actually be more shocking to them. I mean, that's the way you play
I would,
that gag.
yeah, and I would do the next bed, be like, quick, turn on the hot water, hot water.
Yes, steam it up, steam it up.
It's cold. We had a cold shower because we're cooling down, everything's shrinking.
Or you turn on the cold water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the girls don't have to be naked. They could just
No, the
come
girls
in.
don't have to be naked. There's no nudity or any sex in this film at all.
No sex. We're
No,
British.
it's talked about subtly, but it's not in there.
I would have completely avoided the men being creepers. That's again, that's not the point of this.
Only
Yes.
two of them are, yeah, and they're the ones that end up fathering. They're the twins that father the two kids with the same woman.
Right.
Thing.
Wow, this is super ultra juvenile. And there's ways to make, I mean, I love stupid movies, Dumb and Dumber,
Oh,
things
it's a
like
brilliant
that.
movie, yeah.
It's a brilliant movie. And yeah, I mean, you got to find a way to feel for these people. You need to be able to understand their plight and their backgrounds and why they're doing it. And yeah, it's too bad. This is worse than I anticipated.
Sadly, I was really hoping for something better than what I was expecting, and it fell below my expectations and also a little bit below my fears. Because I was at least expecting there to be stakes at play.
Right.
Like, and there wasn't. And it's like the last time I saw a movie where they didn't have any stakes, it was usually at an independent film festival that no one ever heard of, written by a bunch of first-time writers who are either still in high school or just out of college. And that's
yeah,
really
and you get the first-time writers do the external stakes of, oh, I got to make my rent.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to lose this property. Oh, I just inherited something from someone. Oh, my wife or my husband or whatever is going
Someone
to
is sick
divorce
in my
me.
family with cancer. None of those are in this movie at all. Not even discussed or even entertained. There's just none. It's completely
And these are the
devoid
cliches that you would
fall into
fall
if you
back to.
were. Yeah.
I mean, the things I would try to avoid, they're not even doing.
Right. Yeah, the things you'd avoid, they're not even doing, and the things that you would expect are requirements to getting the movie made, they haven't even thought of.
Well, that's a Gordian knot that I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to sort through that one.
Yeah. I mean, and as I said, the little girl and the guy who plays Alex, they're the two best actors in this film, and it's sad. Like there's even a bit at the very end where Matt Walsh, he's in a car with Candace Owens, and he takes off his wig and he says, "This was all part of my plan to get these two back together." And she's just calling him out, like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then he laughs maniacally, and then you get the title cards for the end credits, and then we see Alex again sitting on a couch, and he's talking about his boyhood years at school to Jordan Peterson, who's listening to him and writing notes, but he's not saying. But Jordan Peterson doesn't say anything.
Right.
He's just kind of like, grabbing his head in frustration, trying to get through this therapy session with Alex, who's just kind of recounting all of the things where he doesn't know if he's a man or a woman again. And it's
Clearly they did sit down and write a bunch of stuff that they thought was hilarious.
yes. Oh, I 100% think that they thought all of this stuff was hilarious. And I would have no surprise if long-term subscribers of the Daily Wire thought this was a hilarious film, because they're going to be the only ones really watching it. It's playing definitely to their base. They're going to get great reviews on IMDb for it because they're the only ones seeing it. It's the target audience stuff.
Right.
So it's not going to be entirely merit-based review through a broader aggregate of people and with different tastes, different perspectives. So yeah, I mean, reputation-wise internally, they're going to look at this as a win, and I'm like, good for you guys over there. But if you were to put this up even against, I would say, Bros, that $20 million gay comedy, I think would play the exact same way to that audience. It'd be cringe. Nobody would want to see it.
But I could see an audience that would be amenable to this laughing at the stuff like, oh, look at the guys in wigs. Oh, look at that. Oh, they pulled down the black guy's pants. Ah, I mean, I can actually see an audience laughing at the obvious stuff.
Yeah. And we
Like a USO show where the guys are in bras and, you know, and wigs, and that's enough. That's enough to make everybody howl with laughter is men dressed up as women.
All right, and here we go. We have someone in the chat who's actually brought up something interesting. I'll highlight this really quick. It's by unhandleable Jin. He says there were stakes. Jeremy's wife left him because he was a loser. He wanted to be a winner again. Um, that was told to us, not shown. And there's no your wife leaving you is not a stake. It's a thing that happens. The stake is as the negative impacts of that action, which we never experience, which Jeremy's character never experiences, and that's the problem. If he doesn't really even really suggest that he really wants to be back together with his wife again
Ah,
as well. That doesn't come in until after he starts doing this, and even then, it's not even too direct because the journalist is trying to be with him or claiming that she's his girlfriend and is very threatened by the ex-wife. So it's all over the place. Like it doesn't have any clear, um, it doesn't have any clear focus there. And his arc about learning what to do, what's important, as opposed to just trying to win, is very, very thin because at no point is that ever being challenged to him throughout this entire journey for him to learn. It's not until his daughter says something at the end. And it's like, well, if the external aspect of the world, if the external obstacles are not pushing you towards that goal, then you're not actually going through an arc to see it.
yeah, and in a weird way, what he's doing is antagonistic versus women.
Right.
So he's the antagonist. He's not the pro-antagonist. I mean, he's not the protagonist because what he's doing is indefensible.
I mean, he's positioned as the protagonist, but yes, what he's doing is indefensible. But they try to mitigate that by essentially saying he's being blackmailed by a journalist. And again, they're doing a lot of insults to journalism, which I found a little bit ironic because Daily Wire is technically a news corporation with
True.
journalists and pundits, and if
Hmm.
they're and I don't think they realized what they were doing there. I don't think they were clever enough to realize that they're also mocking themselves. And if they were, they went kind of weak with it.
Right. Well, I mean, in every good show, the lead character has to be the creator of their own problem and then has to solve their own problem.
Yes, like the one thing I really wanted to see in this movie was how did this high school coach, state championship coach, fall to where he is today? Like, what is the mistake he made? What is the choice he made that got him to this position? We're never told, we're never shown, other than the fact that he stopped winning and started losing, and as a result, the wife left him. And we don't know how long ago that was or when that actually happened. And we don't see him make any efforts to try and win her back.
Well,
And
the logical thing would have been that he lost his job as coach because he had brought in a ringer
yeah,
and or a student that had failed and shouldn't be playing, but he
fake the test
their
results. Yeah.
faked the test results, which happen again, things that actually have happened. And then he finds himself coaching this women's NBA WNBA or ish team. No
Yep.
one's coming out, and he decides to go back to that trough of bringing in a ringer. So then you've got a connection, and he knows it's wrong, but he can't stop himself from doing it. I'm just
Therefore, you have
saying.
breaking a habit. That would be this
Yes.
is the habit he used to make to
Yes.
win. It's cheating.
Cheating.
And
This is what he does, is cheating. And if the wife is leaving him because not that he's cheating on her with other women, but he is constantly lying. And this is something that he has to break himself out of.
right. And
Then at
unfortunately, that's
least
not. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not there because when he wins the championships, it's suggested that he played fair. He did not cheat or do anything to,
right.
tip the scales in his favor. and now
And
he's
you have no
doing this,
drama.
and there's no problem with him doing this, really. Yeah, it's I mean, again, the premise alone is very fertile. And
Right.
I have a
Oh,
review of this that's going to be released on my Patreon tomorrow morning. So if you're not a subscriber over
stay
there,
tuned and
go
wait for
subscribe
his
and read it.
Patreon review.
But one spoiler I'll give from that part is I say this is a premise that is very fertile. Unfortunately, the people that are tending the grounds have never farmed anything in their life, and that's how it comes across here. It's like they're they had the idea, they wrote down a bunch of things they thought were funny. They weren't able to stitch them together properly. They didn't explore any real character flaws with any stakes at hand. Um,
Uh, I mean, in one way, it's too bad. That's too bad. How did it look?
uh, the best lit shots were outside.
Okay.
Um, they had a bunch of indoor shots where sometimes the sun is bleeding through and it's shining on a quarter of the guy's face, and it's very distracting. It's like a hot spot on them.
Oh, I see.
Uh, the basketball games are lit really dimly around the court as opposed to how they do it normally in cinematography. It feels like there's a lot more harder shadows than there should be. The shot that I have here in the background is kind of like one of the best lit shots you have, even though I would say the audience is too much in darkness and that needs to pop too, so you can feel like the crowd is actually present in the shot.
Although you can't see the audience in a sports venue.
You can't, but when you look at other things like there's the Whoopi Goldberg movie where she takes over as manager of the Knicks, and
Never saw that.
never saw that.
And
It's
she wasn't in a nun's outfit, then I
she
don't watch it.
she wasn't. No, but when they do some of the the landscape shots of the area, you can visually see the crowd. Same thing when you do like Mighty Ducks. When you're taking a look at the audience, you can see that
Sure.
they're well lit, and you can actually see that they're. I mean, you can always see that there's people there, but they don't look like they're in darkness.
Yeah, that Mighty Ducks is an Academy Award winning series.
Right. And yeah, that's just kind of it. There is no owners to any of the teams here. These are all amateur teams competing for the global games qualifications for the global games. So you don't actually have another tier of
But
oversight or anything
then
of that nature.
there's way less. I mean, yes, it's funny because yeah, in American sports, these things are huge. A high school stadium could have 100,000 seats. I
Right.
mean, the Americans take their sport seriously. And yeah, a lot of this stuff is problematic within the context of amateur sports. But I'm just wondering whether it wouldn't have been better to put them into pro sports because then there's money involved. There's more at stake. Again,
I
I
wish
don't
there
know.
was gambling involved where they were gambling on themselves or something as terrible of a trite type of trope that is. It would have it would have shown something at stake because all they're talking about now is okay, now these men posing as women are getting sponsorships from various companies, so their money problems are solved, except the coach isn't getting any sponsorships. So I don't know how he's making any
Right.
money off of this. And money was like a motivating factor at the very beginning, but then that's completely abandoned. So it's again, you have a problem presented, then quickly solved, and other problems are not even brought up to keep the story going.
Well, I mean, you've got to have the the vector, as I call it, the wider the vector in terms of the gravity of the problem and you know the thing that the hero has to overcome. The greater the problem, then the
The
more interesting the story.
more interesting the story, the more rewarding the
Yes.
achievement. Yeah.
So
And
in the end, what was the problem he had to overcome other than just make fun of
this
the whole
loophole.
notion of
Yeah.
getting men dressed up as women?
That's it. I mean, that's the thing. A it's a lucrative premise that was executed in the thinnest low-hanging fruit of ways.
Wow, this is yeah, what a rich vein, and a controversial one.
A controversial one that premise-wise is very controversial, but I can see, I mean, it not necessarily this year or next year, but I could see in the next couple of years this being like the subject being done by a proper set of comedians or comedic writers in Hollywood nailing it well in a fashion that is actually quite respectful of those that are legitimately trans versus the ones that are gaming the system to win at sports at the
Well,
expense of women.
and that's really the premise that you would want to explore.
Exactly. Yes.
But I don't think anyone's going to do it. I think this is it.
I think this is going to be it for the next few years. I don't think this type of premise is going to circle back around until it's the basic controversial nature of it kind of dies down a little more. That's it. It's going to be a while. But what happens here is that you have someone that was so in love with the premise, they didn't put in the work to make it actually something that could have probably really stirred the pot or shook
I can see
the
that.
shook the world.
I can see them going, yeah, this is really going to stick it to them. Yeah. As opposed to just making it funny. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Well,
So
they didn't have us.
Yeah, they
At
did
the
not.
end, he overcame his problem of losing his wife. He won her back, not by winning, but by being a
Being a
good
good
man and a
man.
good father. Well, that's a good B story.
It would be, but that's not what happens
Oh,
because he doesn't show any desire to try and get back with his wife. So therefore, it's not
oh,
really a problem. Like he's divorced. He doesn't seem to be too upset about it. He seems to have an amicable relationship with her. He brings up that she left him, but we don't see him make any effort to win her back at all. Like he doesn't do anything. He doesn't bring her flowers. He doesn't try to help out around the house. He doesn't. He displays no traits to say that I want you back. I'm still in love with you. He never even says I'm still in love with you. That's another thing.
okay.
So if it's not a problem if your wife leaves you and you don't express regret or disdain for that action, it's just a
Or some
situation
groveling.
or some groveling. Like again, a problem is very specific. The problem is that the problem inconveniences you and hurts your life, and you need to solve it. There's no solution to his life getting back together with his wife because there's no problem associated with the fact that they're not together. And that's a problem within its story itself. I would have loved if he was like, constantly asking out his wife, like, come on, I'm not signing the divorce papers. I want to take you out. I want to show you I'm the man that
Sure.
you fell in love with.
Yep.
Never does any of that. Not once. She's already
Right.
with another guy. He's accepting of that. He doesn't like it, but he's accepting of it. And it's I just wish they actually went somewhere with it. But that's just me.
Yeah. Okay.
Dungeon
Honey,
Master
can you
Blaster.
just name one thing that
Mhm.
that that irritates you about me? One. Da 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 da. Okay,
Yeah.
two things. Like
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because again, when she has that speech, it's like, I left you because you were losing and you were miserable. It's like, if you showed us that, I'd be on the side. And if you showed us the fallout of that, where he feels like the only way he can get his life back in order is to get back with his wife, I'd be on the side
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
resolution. We never do that. We don't even see him look at a picture of his wife.
Mm.
The closest thing we get is maybe after Alex wins that race, he gets a text saying like, "Oh yeah," from his wife, like his ex-wife, "Your daughter's very proud of you." He's like, "Well, how about the mother?" And then you get 3 dots and then nothing, and that's
Sorry to
it.
interrupt, but you should grab this Mr. Crack Media.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Mr. Butt Crack Media with a 99-cent pooper sticker. Thank you so much, Mr. Butt
Thank
Crack
you.
Media.
That was unbelievably kind of you.
That is very kind. But
And for
yeah,
that, you get Godzilla traveling across the screen.
Dungeon Master Blaster brings up a good point. He says comedy is probably the most difficult thing to write.
Yep.
It's definitely up there. It's really, really
Yeah, but to me, it's also using the frame.
yeah. Also have like nibbling the mic too. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
also comedy is also repetition. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it
And
isn't.
the right amount of repetition too. You have to have
Right.
that discipline.
Oh, yeah. Tell my wife, dear, like 15 times in a row. That's when it starts getting funny. Yes, dear. Shut up. It's going to be funny eventually.
Yeah.
I just have to repeat it. No, she hates that. Absolutely hates that. So, yeah.
Well, I want to thank everyone in the chat, all 95 of you, for
Wow.
tuning in for this impromptu discussion of Lady Ballers with Paul Chato.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to join you on this, and thank you for telling me why I shouldn't see the movie. And I'm disappointed. It would have been really neat if this independent production house could have like really nailed something that people want to see. But as you said, I
Yep.
think the built-in audience is just going to probably love it.
They'll probably, yeah, they'll love it, and that's fine for them. Good for them. I just really wish that this was something that these guys said, okay, you want to play ball, let's play ball, and here's what they were able to deliver, and it just knocked it out of the park.
Right.
And unfortunately, the majority of the industry and the rest of the world's assumptions who are not affiliated or are not fans of Daily Wire will be reinforced by the execution of this film. And I feel
That's
very
yeah.
sad for that, because nothing would make me happier than this premise of a movie, and they nailed every aspect of it, and it became an epic like comedy that stood next to shoulder to shoulder with Airplane, Young Frankenstein,
Or
Happy Gilmore, Dumb and Dumber, and all those movies.
yeah, that I would have been happy with just Dodgeball.
Yeah, and they're doing a sequel to that one too. So we'll see how
Yeah.
long it's going to take till that hits the court.
Yeah, that was a very interesting movie. That was funny because Dodgeball is not interesting at all. I mean,
but they pulled it off.
I thought they did. I thought they did a good job. And well, thanks for having me. And I'm thanks for going through the movie with me. I'm disappointed.
I didn't want to be disappointed. I'm sorry,
Oh,
but yeah, that's
none of us want to be disappointed when we see stuff, especially comedies. Like we really need comedies. I want to see the Jennifer Lawrence movie. I got to watch that because I heard it was okay.
it's okay. I mean, it's okay. I will say this: a lot of people think it's the funniest scene is when she's naked beating up people. I think there's some other scenes that are a bit funnier than that. But
Okay.
but
I give her full credit for
oh yeah, she
yeah.
has no shame, and that's fine with regards to her body, and I'm fine with that. Obviously,
No,
but,
just the premise of it's kind of a grotty premise. Yeah, I'll fuck your son. Okay, fine.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and now I will say this: like Matthew Broderick's pretty good in it. As I'm like, he's never really not good at anything.
No, he's very good.
But I would say the Jennifer Lawrence comedy is far better and far better done in every way than Lady Ballers. Just on the comedy genre premise. But I would say if you want to see a movie about a man pretending to be a woman, go watch the classic Tootsie.
Yes. That's really well done, and I think they handled the turnaround in that pretty good. And there's Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. Oh, and we have a $10 super chat
Yeah. Oh,
from Unhandable Jen. Thank you so much. He says, I think the doctor makes great points. I still think you are not entirely fair, but I get it. I hope that Paul still watches and shares his thoughts. There we
well, I mean, you know what? Unhandable gin. There's just so much stuff out there, and sometimes in this business, you end up having to watch things that you don't really want to watch. And my channel is not really a review channel, but the bit that I'm going to be doing on Monday revolves around what are the philosophical requirements to doing a comedy within a supercharged environment, and in this particular case, trans rights. Like, how do you reconcile all of that stuff, make a comedy, but also, not hurt the marginalized? And I don't mean the trans rights activists. I mean, this movie only exists because trans rights activists have kind of screwed it for everybody, and insisted, on special accommodation. And, but that doesn't help those out there who just want to hide in the shadows and live their lives.
Yeah. And I just want to reinforce this on Hannibal Jen. I really appreciate the $10 super chat. I am not trying to be unfair on this. I'm definitely judging it based on the merits of what they put together as the final product, and how I wish it was more than what it was. And I'm not going to dispute the fact that there were ideas in there that could have been, like as I said, I really wanted to see how Jeremy Boring's character and his wife, their relationship ended. I think if they did that, it probably would have helped motivate the rest of the movie a little more.
And
Uh,
and you also have to have extraordinary moments which cause your main characters to have to deal with a crisis. If you look at
mhm.
the Ben Stiller in the Jungle movie,
Oh, Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, one of the best turnarounds is when the director gets killed.
Right. Yes. And now you're like, okay, there's nobody there to guide them but
No
themselves.
one.
Yep. And
Uh,
that goes into another aspect. One thing that this movie could have used, which is, and it's an axiom to filmmaking, which is never make anything easy for your main
no,
characters.
that's correct. Never.
And I'll cite another movie that's actually quite good and actually has a lot of heart, and that's Mrs. Doubtfire. And that's a problem when it comes to a divorce and marriage. He's lost his wife. He can't get back together with her, but he loves his kids and he wants to spend time with his kids, but he doesn't have full visitation because he quit his job for reasons because he didn't want the cartoon he was voicing to be influencing kids to smoke cigars. And two, he's a little bit of a kid himself, and he likes being around them, but he lost a job and he's lost the house. So he's unemployed and doesn't have a home, and therefore he can't see his kids until he gets a job and gets an apartment. And when he does get that, he only gets to see his kids, once every 2 weeks, and that just kills him and eats him up inside.
And what he did was, I mean, it's funny at the beginning, but on the other hand, what he's doing is very underhanded.
Yes. It's very underhanded, but at the same time, he's also learning to be a responsible adult, which is something he never
Right.
did while married. And
Yes.
that is a framework that when you're dealing with a premise like this, especially for Lady Ballers, is what you would look at and be like, well, how can I reinterpret that type of conflict, motivation, and growth into one of these characters on this team?
Yep.
Because that is what it's all about. And unfortunately, that wasn't handled
Yeah,
here.
and Mrs. Doubtfire, he started off as a jerk that did not pull his weight,
Right?
deserved to be divorced, and then learned how to be a good husband. But then the divorce has happened. He's come to grips with that's the reality, but he still became a better person
Yes. He still
out of
became a
it.
better person. He didn't get the girl, but he got his kids and he became a better person. And
Right.
you
And
you
the
know
wife
things
was
are gonna be
happy
okay.
to have him as a
Around still.
responsible father to the kids,
Exactly.
which is like a fantastic wow. I mean, that's
And the funny part too is Sally Field's character in this movie, when we were introduced to her, you already hate her because she's already smitten and eager to reconnect with Pierce Brosnan's character before he even comes in the picture and before she even brings up the idea of divorce. Like the very first scene you get, she's in the office. She finds out this dreamy guy is coming to asking for her as a client. And she's all like, ooh, wow, this is great. Then she comes home, sees the cacophony of chaos at her home, and immediately is like, Robin Williams, I'm divorcing you.
right.
And what happens next? She starts dating the client that she was dreaming about before she even said that she was going to divorce the guy. And you're like, there's some subtext going on there where she was ready to get out of this marriage the moment she heard that guy's name was coming back into her life. And she
Well,
found all the reasons that kind of piled up together and was like, I can now justify this, even though that might not be a possibility.
although I have to say that my wife and I have an agreement that if Pierce Brosnan comes to our door, she's allowed to go away with him. That's it. It's done.
But that's consensual. So you're okay.
Yeah, we've made that agreement. That's just the way it is. Someone up there, hold on, we've missed
We got
Stacy.
MJ1 Media.
Yeah,
It says also check out Joanna Man from 2002.
don't know it.
That is a yes. I'm slightly familiar with it. I probably have seen it on like the Movie Network way back when. But yeah, that's a male basketball player pretends to be a woman and joins the female basketball league as a ringer and goes through that
So
as well.
that maybe they didn't want to duplicate that premise.
Uh, there's nothing really to stop them. I mean, ideas are not copyrightable,
That's
only
true.
executions. But yeah, that movie did not perform well. If
And
I'm
and
being
the ringer
honest.
aspect of this is different in that they can't do anything with the ringer because it's a trans individual.
Right.
That's
Is that balloons from air quoting?
well, I said trans individual and I got
You got
balloons.
balloons.
But thank you very much, handleable gin. Yes, I look
Yeah.
forward to what you think about what I'm writing on Monday.
And then we also have Kitty Bear for €2. It says,
Hello, Kitty Bear.
Is it better than the Disney garbage? It's safer than the Disney garbage.
Wow.
I'll put it that way. The Disney garbage at least has proper structure to it for the most part, and they try with conflict and character conflict in their stuff. It is really apple and oranges. It's really hard to compare on that. Other than the fact that I would say this, aside from a little bit of bad language, I think anyone over the age of 10 would have no problem seeing it and not get traumatized or anything of that nature. There's no, it's not a raunchy comedy by any means. Like, it's not exploitative in vulgarity or sex or anything of that
Maybe
nature.
they should have. Is it the Son of Flubber? Is it well, the first movie, the Flubber movie, was called The Professor or something.
The Absent-Minded Professor.
The
Yeah.
Absent-Minded Professor. That one had the basketball sequence where he put Flubber on the shoes of the basketball team.
For the Robin Williams remake, yes.
No, it was on the original too.
It was on the original too. Yep. Yes,
okay.
that did.
I might have been the Son of Flubber or this. Anyway, so maybe they should have watched that because,
that would actually, what? I would strongly recommend watching Flubber or the original, The Absent-Minded Professor. Those are great old movies. I saw The Absent-Minded Professor when I was 19 for the first time because I didn't grow up watching any Disney movies really.
Right.
So I didn't get to see those until film school when we went through all the history of
and the stakes in Disney movies were also, oh my God, don't let them find out.
Right.
Like, oh my God, you've turned into a dog. Don't tell. I mean, there's that whole human embarrassment and shaming
and fear of consequences. Yeah,
fear of consequences. What are the fear of consequences in this movie?
None. Cancellation, but they don't set up what that actually means in this movie. So let's say in 10 years from now, cancellation is not a thing. Who watching that movie is going to remember cancellation and understand the stakes behind it? And then again, add another 10 years on top of that. Maybe a teenager watches this. What's cancellation? What the heck is it talking about? Social media? What are they doing? Like, it's if you don't set up those stakes or consequences within the setting of your movie, they then don't exist. And you've essentially have dated this film where film is only going to be relevant between 2019 and 2020 something. And that's unfortunate because again, the premises can transcend time if you hit all the beats to do it.
Anyways, I think we're done.
I do as well. I think we're done. I want to thank everyone in the audience for sticking with us for the last hour and so. We went a little bit over time than expected, but greatly appreciated. Yeah, if you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment, ask a question, and I'll catch you guys next time for something else. All right. So thank you, everybody. And
eat Paul.
Oh no. Well, never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.